Okay, as promised, here is the APA walkthrough video. But before we get started with the template, we are going to figure out where do we find scholarly sources. This is something that came up with multiple students, and I just want to give you guys a quick idea of how to go about that. If you go to the MSU West Plains homepage, and you go up here to search, you can search for library. And this is going to bring you to a results page. The very first link there is the Garnet Library. This is the one that I use. From here, you'll go to Start Here, and that will bring you to this page. Now, once you get here, the default is Books and More, but we're going to go to Articles and Databases, and we're going to go to Academic Search Complete. For this course, this is probably the only one that you will need to use. Once you get to this page, you're going to type in your search term. We're going to use plagiarism. We're going to make sure that full text is checked along with scholarly journals. Scholarly journals have been peer reviewed, so you're not getting published without somebody in your discipline okaying your work, basically. There's 1,376 results. It's a whole lot. Normally what you would want to do is you would want to narrow this down. For most academic writing, you're not going to want to use something that was published in 1945 unless you're doing a paper on the history of something. We are going to use 2011. It's a good idea to try to stay within the last 5 years. We don't want book reviews. We want only academic journals, so we're going to click that box. This needs to be over here. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but I am not bilingual, so English is what I'm going to be looking for. Now you'll see that we're down to 512 results. For the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to use the first couple. And keep in mind that these are not APA journal articles, so they will not be formatted appropriately. And for the purposes of this tutorial, that's fine. Obviously, if you were doing research on, say, Freud or another psychologist, what would happen is when you search for their name, you would come back with more results within the field of psychology than outside of it. Now, as you can see, I opened these in a new tab, and there's a reason that I did that. And we're going to start with this one. On this page, all the way to the right, there's this nifty little tool here that says Cite. If you look here, you'll notice there are 3 authors. This is something you guys are just going to want to keep an eye on. When you click on Cite, it's going to bring up a page, and this lists all the different citations for this article. MLA is probably the one that you guys are most familiar with, but we want APA. So when you go up here to Manage Sources on the References tab in Word, I'm going to delete these. We're going to add a new source, and we are going to copy and paste. Now, if you remember, I told you that there were 3 authors, and from this page you can see 3 authors, but this ampersand is a problem, as is this comma. This is the appropriate way to separate authors in the reference section, but not within Reference Manager, and we'll address that in just a second. I'm using keyboard shortcuts, which is why you guys are not seeing the menu. For those of you who do not know, Control-C is copy, Control V is paste. Now, because this is not a psychological journal, it is a journal related to something not psychology. The title here, these are capitalized. Typically, the first letter of the title is capitalized. Everything else is lowercase unless it's a proper noun like a name or the name of a measure. Anytime that you have a colon, the first letter is capitalized, and then everything following that will be in lowercase. And again, if you're doing something if you're looking at an article within the field of psychology, you're not going to have this issue. This is only because this is outside that it's a problem. So if we say okay, now there's 3 authors to this, but if you look down here, it's only showing 1. And the reason for that is because this, while it's formatted properly for the reference section, it's not formatted properly for the reference manager. So we'll go to edit. And what we're going to do is we're going to take out those commas and we're going to separate these authors with a semicolon. Also, this ampersand or and sign has to come out of here. And we'll put in a semicolon. And then when we tell it OK, it's going to ask, do you want it to update your master list and your current document? And yes, of course you do. Because next semester, when you're writing a paper on plagiarism, you'll have these sources here and you can write your paper. So now when you look down here, we have all 3 authors as they're supposed to be. We have the date, we have the title of the paper, we have the journal, name, the issue, and the volume number or volume and issue number, and then the page numbers. We're going to add our second source the exact same way. We're going to go over here, we're going to hit Cite. And we are going to go down to APA. This one only has 1 author, so we don't really have to make any changes for the author. Miss the T. All right. Now again, we do not want there to be, so these are both names, but plagiarism doesn't need to be capitalized. This doesn't need to be capitalized. Okay, so once we add those, they're in here and they look as they should. On the title page of your paper, up here where we have running head, the running head stays there. You don't ever take that off. Okay, down here where the title is, right, the title of your paper goes here. And then up here you want to put a shortened version of that title. So we're going to call it paper. Name goes here. If you have a very common name, I would suggest that you sign your name using your middle initial, because that will help when people are looking for works done by you in the future. Make sure your date is updated and your course number is correct. And then we're going to go down to the bottom. Now that we've added these references, we're going to go over here, see where it says Update Citations and Bibliography. We're going to click on that. And then your reference page is done. It's there. Everything is exactly as it should be. We didn't have to do anything. We didn't have to format anything. We didn't have to play with anything. We just updated it. It's there. It's happy. Now, on these headings, for the purposes of this course and most courses until you're doing original research, the only heading you're going to need is a level 1. And that's this one. So what we want to do is we want to come down here and we want to get rid of this, all of this, because we don't need it. Not for this class. So just delete that off your template, get rid of it, it'll be fine. We are going to need multiple versions of this. But I thought that if I had given you guys a template with a bunch of level 1 headings, I didn't know if you would be able to make heads or tails of this. And that's why I left the other ones included. But really for this class, you don't need them. Also notice that there is no, since an abstract is not required, the abstract page is not here. So you have your title page, and then you have your paper, the very next page, page 2. So right here, this is your introduction. And you don't say introduction. It's assumed that this is going to be your introduction. This is where you are going to tell me what you're going to tell me. Okay, introduce your subject. Why is it important? What is it? Define necessary terms and tell me, you know, what are you going to tell me in the course of the paper? So for your plagiarism paper, one of the things that was very common was there were different types of plagiarism, and there were ways to avoid, right? And so these were common headings. So tell me what you're going to tell me. You know, define plagiarism. You can tell me that there are numerous types of plagiarisms, that there are different ways that plagiarism can be avoided, those kinds of things. Introduce your subject. Who, what, when, where, and why are good ways to do that. And the bottom is going to be your conclusion, which is also a level 1 heading. Conclusion is always going to be conclusion. Okay, you don't have to change it. It's simply conclusion. And in this section of your paper, you are going to tell me what you have told me. Now, the ticket to this is that the introduction and the conclusion are both going to summarize the paper, right? One is foreshadowing and one is summary. So kind of keep that in mind. In your introduction, also make it a point to tell me, why is this important? Why does your subject material matter? So this is a good place to put in like consequences. Well, you know, if you plagiarize, this is what can happen. Those kinds of things. So we're going to go back over here. We're going to close out those citation boxes and download these PDF articles. All right, because these are the ones that we're going to include in our paper. The abstract right here is a summary of the article. This is a good thing to read when you're actually searching for articles to do research, because it'll tell you whether or not this might fit. Now, for your final paper, even your first one related to your cultural immersion project, this is a good thing to know, right? Because when you're looking up stereotypes, this comes in handy. All right, so we're done with this. We can get rid of that for now. These papers, again, were not written in APA format, but right here, these are the printed version of your level 1 headings. If you're actually reading a journal article, this is what you're going to find. Okay, this is when you know it's a level 1. When you're looking at research and you have a level 1, and then you'll have level 2s down here for like participants, methods, blah, 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 stuff like that, that's when you'll use those. So kind of keep an eye out for formatting as you're reading some of the articles that you're reading, both for this class and for other classes. Because regardless of format, it's all going to be broken up into headings one way or another. Familiarize yourself with the formatting for your discipline. It'll save you a lot of headache later. And always use a template. Okay, templates were made for a reason, because they save time. Now, the thing that we're going to look at next is direct quotes versus paraphrasing, and how do we properly cite those. At this point, Reference Manager is set up. Our title page is done. Our headings are done. We know broadly what we're going to talk about. And our references have been updated. So if you're going to direct quote, we're just going to pull this right here. You don't want to keep source formatting because it'll keep text and all that stuff. You just want to keep text only. And you may have to, like here, because formatting is different, fix any of these issues. Now, because we copied and pasted this, and because it's a direct quote, it goes in quotation marks. Once we have it in quotation marks, we then have to cite it. So we go up here to references, and before the punctuation, this is a big one, don't put your citation after the punctuation, because Safe Assign will say that you plagiarized because it wasn't there. Lots of you are making this mistake. So you enter your citation before the punctuation, right? So you have your quoted stuff, and you have your citation, and you don't have to quote the entire sentence. Maybe like, you start out mid-sentence, at which point you put your quotation mark where you start and where you end. And then you put your citation in. Once your citation is in there, you need to come down here and see what is the page number for this. Okay, so right here, that page number is 78. So you click over here, you go to the drop down, edit citation, page number 78, done. So now you have a direct quote that is properly cited for APA formatting, right? No hassle, no worries, no problem, it's done. The next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to look at paraphrasing. And so over here, this author is talking about paraphrasing and they're defining it. I'm not going to use their exact words. We are going to say that, not paraphrasing. We are paraphrasing self-plagiarism. Okay, so they're talking about self-plagiarism. So we are going to offer a paraphrased definition of self-plagiarism. So we're going to say that self-plagiarism is the act of recycling one's own work. Okay, so the gist is the same, the idea is the same. They used a lot more words to say it, we used a few words to say it, but we still have to give them credit, right? Because we know that it's the act of recycling one's own work, because it says in the article that it's the act of borrowing words as a large portion of the present work from previously published articles, right? From your own previously published articles. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to insert citation, and we're going to put that in there. Okay? No direct quotes, no page number. This is the reason why. If I am reading your paper, because I want to write my own paper on plagiarism, and your paper is the paper that I find that I want to use, then I'm going to look at what you said and I'm going to say, okay, well, if this author got self-plagiarism from here in general terms, right? You found your definition based off the definition that was in this author's work. However, this statement is an exact statement, right? It's a direct quote. So then what I can do is I can look at your authors and I can look at the date, and I know that your quote was found on page 78 of this work. So I can come down here to your references and I can go, okay, well, these are the authors and this is the date, so this is where the quote is relevant. And I can see what is the title of the work. So here's your title, and it's in this volume, this issue of this journal. So essentially what you're doing is you're leaving me a roadmap for how to come back and find your work. Now, if you were paying attention, you notice that both of these quotes, the direct quote and the indirect quote, the paraphrase quote, were pulled from one article, but we actually cited two. And I did that on purpose. The reason I did that is because I want to show you guys that if you go up here to manage sources, you'll see this check mark because this is the one that we used, but we didn't use this one. Okay, so if you don't use it, you can't just leave it in your sources. Now, because I asked you guys to use two sources, you would have used both of yours. But let's say that you're writing a 20-page term paper, and maybe you have 15 sources, but you only quoted 13 of them. You have to get rid of your extras. You can't just leave them there. So you go here and you delete it. This is Cairns, which is over here. So this is the fine art of plagiarism. So we're going to delete this, and it deletes it from your current work, but, right, it's still here. It didn't go anywhere. It's still in your master list. So next semester when you're doing your plagiarism paper, you have access to articles, right? So keep that in mind. This database is really good once you start getting into your fields, regardless what kind of formatting you're using, because it saves those old articles. And you never know, when you're writing a paper and you go, well, I wrote a paper in my junior year that had this information in it. Keep it in your master source. That's it. Keep it in your master list of your sources. You'll always have it. So once you have updated this list right here, you're going to come down here and you're going to update. You should update your references. That should be the very last thing you do before you turn your paper in. Update it and save it. Right? So now we're down. We have one reference. Didn't have to do anything. Self did it. It's happy. And, we're good to go. Well, you guys are not good to go. I actually expect there to be like words and stuff in here. But for the purposes of the tutorial, we're good. If you guys have any more questions, if things don't make sense, if you need me to clarify anything, post in the question and answer, send me an email, send me a text. If it's related to formatting, I would prefer that you post questions in the question and answer, because chances are you're not the only person that has that question, and that allows me to answer the same question once instead of like 60 times. So if you guys need anything else, though, don't hesitate to get in touch.